And we're on again. Hi, everyone. It's another episode of Paranormal, and we are your hosts. I'm Rachel, and
I am Kaz.
that
That
was
was
very,
very subdued
I was going to say
today.
that was very demure today.
I know, because I'm just a part of the abandoned, desolate background of
Almost what where
the
you're going looks
abandoned
like.
town.
Just wait till
I'm
you get where
just
you're going this week.
just a tumbleweed in the background.
Oh my God.
Oh
It's
gosh.
amazing. Well,
Yeah.
we don't have many news this week in the paranormal front for us because we've had the last few weeks to kind of just chill and do evidence review and go through a bunch of stuff from the last investigation. But man, do we have a busy summer coming up.
Yeah, we're just talking about maybe having to do a little hiatus from this because we're going to be doing so many investigations.
Yeah, but it
We'll
won't be
see.
long. It'll probably be a couple weeks just to give us a bit of the break and the focus
Hmm.
for, what we have to do, which is super fun. But
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So like July is a lot of public events and investigations. We busy. We gonna be all
Hmm.
over this province. I had to think about where we were going for a few seconds. Because
Yeah,
we were
like
literally going from,
literally 4 hours one way, 4 hours the other.
yeah, literally, yeah, end to end.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
Oh,
It's gonna be
perfect.
fun. And it's nice outside today.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. I was actually just napping uh in the sunshine. Because you know when you're like, oh, I'm gonna go sit outside, and then it's just so nice, and you're all cozy, and it's sunny, and you're like, that's how I was.
Yeah. I said that to Ethan yesterday. I was like, oh, mommy just wants to go home and pull out the cot and lie in the sun like a cat.
Yes. Oh. Well,
Then I didn't do it.
considering, where we live, we've got about 2 more weeks of it, and
Oh, you
just
froze.
kidding, just kidding, Mother Nature.
There you
What?
go.
Am I back?
You just
Did
froze. You were like,
did you even hear? Oh my gosh. That's because the powers that be is like, don't even joke about how shitty summer could be. So it
it's supposed to be
reframed,
it's
it
supposed to be
refrained
hot
from
and
that.
muggy, which is my kind of weather. So
Yeah.
we go for that. But
Damn straight.
speaking of hot and muggy and weird things, today's episode is all about ghost towns in Canada. I was gonna say in Ontario, but yeah, they're in
Hmm.
Ontario, but they're all over Canada, and we got some pretty interesting ones. Now, I know through my research, and I know Kaz, you're saying through yours, it's like a lot of these ghost towns don't really state that they're haunted.
Hmm.
But again, who's living there to tell us?
Well, exactly.
Right? So
Exactly.
chances are there's probably a few that are still hanging around.
100%. And considering, like, depending on where they were and what they were sort of used for before they were abandoned, that in
Hmm.
itself, that history saturated the buildings and the land. So yeah,
I got some
probably
pretty
a lot of
interesting ones
residual stuff.
because of that, because of like their
Hmm.
past, right? So I guess I'll go first because I think I have no, we probably have the same. I think we probably have the same amount of numbers.
All
Uh,
right,
but let's
knock
start.
them out.
We're gonna start on the West Coast, and we're headed all the way to British Columbia to a little town called Derby.
Ooh.
I know. So Derby is located on the Lower Fraser River, in northwestern Langley, and it was the original site of Fort Langley, like the original apparently. And it was
Right.
established in 1827 by a now defunct Hudson's Bay Company.
Okay. HBC, Hudson Bay Company, makes an appearance pretty much in every one of my forgetting
Yeah,
stories.
and now they're just gone.
Exactly. Well, maybe you shouldn't have had really overpriced stuff. Just saying.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways.
I agree. Um, so the fort was then later moved 4 kilometers to its present location in 1839. So in 1858, when the Royal Engineers arrived, they built barracks in Derby. So all the signs of the town and fort have since disappeared. And it is pretty much just an intersection in the middle of farmland.
Perfect.
Legit. Um, It did have a church, so that church was called the Church of St. John's the Divine, and that was moved across the river to what is now known as Maple Ridge, and it still remains there today.
Beautiful.
So the only surviving trace of Derby on the map is the Derby Reach of the Fraser, which describes the northward arc of the Fraser south of Haney. So Maple Ridge is downtown, and the Fraser is the river. And the associated Derby Reach Regional Park. Literally, that's all that's left of this town. It's literally nothing. It is literally a ghost, an invisible ghost.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's BC. There's really not much out there.
Nice. Oh, do you want me to go?
If you want.
All right. Well, now we'll go to the other side, to the East Coast, and we're going to go to New Brunswick. Here in New Brunswick, this is called New Ireland, established in 1816. And then in 1866, it was officially a farming and a logging community with 68 families. In census in 1871, the population was 150 people. By 1898, it had one post office and one church and a population of only 100 people. So this is located in Albert County, west of Riverside, near the northeast corner of Fundy National Park. As I said, it was a small logging company and it was abandoned in the 1920s, basically due to the fact that it just wasn't thriving anymore and people were moving out to bigger areas. So between 1905 and 1906, an Irish man named Tom Collins arrived, and he was hired by the Reverend McAuley to help at the church. Mary Ann Macaulay, the Reverend's cousin, also lived at the rectory part of the church. Mary Ann and Tom one day had a disagreement over him not catching enough fish for supper. So the
What an
Reverend
ass.
Macaulay, apparently, Reverend Macaulay had gone away on business, so it was just the two of them, just Mary Ann and Tom. So Marianne starts getting on his case. Tom's like, I've had enough of this. And he goes outside to chop some wood to vent or let off steam. And she proceeds to follow him, scolding him and yelling at him. And he's had enough. That's it. What ensues is kind of a mystery, but he ends up leaving and is later apprehended. And when he's apprehended, he is found with a bunch of stolen items from the house on him. He did admit that he did rob the house before he left in order to get funds to leave. Um, but somebody murdered Marianne, and not just like murder her, like bludgeoned her head with an axe and then slit her throat.
No, like Lizzie Borden
So,
style.
exactly. So he was like, "What? I only robbed the place. I didn't murder her with the axe I was just using after the argument we just had." But anyways, so it was considered one of the most heinous crimes of the area. Collins faced not one, not two, but three trials for this murder. The first one, he was found guilty. However, the judge was found to be in error of instructions to the jury, so they had to cause like mistrial. He then went on to trial number two, where Collins himself testified, which he did not in the first one. He did admit to the theft, but not the murder. And because the evidence was circumstantial and not fact-based, it was a hung jury. So he was kind of like, oh, I don't know what to. The third trial, it was the same conclusion as the first, which was guilty, and he was sentenced to death by hanging. November 15th, 1907, Collins was hung in the Albert County Jail, Gual, as they go. He was the first and last man to be hung in New Brunswick. For over 100 years, the community remained divided over whether or not he did it. Somewhere between the first and second trial, the Reverend McAuley, the cousin, he suffered a, a pox. He suffered a massive stroke. They say
Oh, let's see.
under, there you go. I because my writing trailed off, so I couldn't quite see what I wrote there. They say likely due to the stress and grief of the whole thing. So now there are, let's see, there's stone foundations of some of the homes, and the church is still there, as well as the graveyard is still there. You can visit the place. It's kind of overtaken. They say that people who visit the site feel like really spookiness happens. They feel very anxious around the site, and they just feel like they're being watched con- constantly as they wander around. Dun dun dun.
That's cool.
I
We need to
know.
go. Like, we need to go.
Yes, there was a news article I was reading, and there was some pictures, and it's just like you kind of wander out to the woods, and all of a sudden there's just these stone foundations everywhere,
Mhm.
a church and graveyards, and you're like, I mean, in gravestones, and you're like, what is this place?
Cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. Well, let's stay out on the East Coast because I'm going to take you to Newfoundland because there's ghost towns out there apparently.
Yes.
This one
Everywhere.
is apparently it's called Flat Island, Newfoundland. Flat.
Yes.
Um, so Flat Island is one of four rocky islands. It's really not that flat. In central Bonavista Bay, which all of them together they're called the Flat Islands. The islands named Flat or Samson Island, Berryhead, North Island, and Coward Island. They were
Perfect.
among the earliest reported settled areas in the Bonavista Bay, with the first record of residents in 1806. So the settlements on the Flat Islands concentrated on Flat Island, with about one half of the population living there. Tremendous growth and development was reported at Flat Islands from 1836 to 1891. In 1844, it was reported that a schoolhouse was being built on Flat Island. And by 1846, the school was in operation. So by 1869, Flat Islands had a population of 230, and by 1891, it had gone up to 417.
Ooh.
Obviously, being out on the East Coast and Newfoundland, their main industry was fishing, right?
Absolutely.
So the development of the islands rested on a shift from local fishing to the Labrador fisheries in the 1850s. But 100 years later, by the 1950s, there was a decline in the fisheries from Labrador. So more than half the workforce began to be employed in other areas, carpentry, construction, and woodworks. And those were now being placed on in shoreline communities of Bonavista Bay and in central Newfoundland. So it started to shift, like the work started to shift. So fishing was kind of not really in the picture anymore.
Mhm.
But the interesting thing about this ghost town is they didn't just abandon the buildings. They literally put them on boats and moved them.
Wow.
Yeah. So in 1954, the first house from Flat Island was floated to Glovertown. And in 1957, the majority of the population prepared to move. So the last move at a Flat Islands involved 119 families, and the government helped them move.
Nice.
Yeah. So they ended up being like just shifted all over Newfoundland. So many houses were floated or disassembled and rafted to their new locations. And now there's pretty much that nothing remains in this town other than what it used to be and empty holes where houses were.
Wow.
That's Newfoundland.
How bizarre.
I know, but there's
Was
pictures
it
of them.
cheaper to float your house than go just build a new one, I guess? I don't know.
I don't know, but there's actually pictures out there because it happened in the 1950s of these houses floating to be moved. Yeah,
That says a lot about the construction of those homes, that you could just slide them onto a boat and send
I
them
know.
down the
Not
river.
even a boat; it's like a raft.
Wow. Although I
I would.
suppose, like going to these pioneer villages, I mean, look at just how basic they were. They're just I mean, basic, but you know what I mean? Like it's just a log square.
Mhm.
No basement, no nothing. So I guess. I
But
guess.
it also makes me wonder how many of those houses fell apart and went into the water,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know. It's just one of those things. I would have been interested to see that.
I've seen on those shows where they're like mighty machines or whatever it is, and they've shown where they've transported homes.
Mhm,
Like if you think about these pioneer villages, my earplugs are falling out. There we go. Those homes are not original to the lands that they're in, so they have to get transported there. Now, in
mhm,
some cases, they're dismantled and then rebuilt at the place, but for the most part, they're jacked up,
mhm.
shimmied onto some flatbed, and then just driven. So I suppose it's no different. But well, I suppose the 50s, but I mean, still, things have come a long way since the
It's
50s
like the
in
Lind
terms
House.
of,
That's like the Lind House in Whitby. They moved it twice, right?
yeah.
And they have pictures of the second time it's moved, it coming down Brock, like turning from like Dundas, so Highway 2, turning right onto Brock. Like
Holy
it's
moly.
crazy, and it's the whole house on the rails
Yeah.
on the trailer. Like it's so interesting to see. I wonder if
Wow.
the ghost rode in there with it.
Imagine the ghosts are like, what the heck is going on here?
It's a freaking
What's why the
earthquake.
trees moving? Or they just wake up and they're like, this doesn't look right.
What the fuck?
Yeah, where have the fields gone? Who put their building right next to our house?
Oh my
It
god.
must be confusing.
Yeah. Oh.
Anyways, all right. Well, I take us northwest to the Yukon. I'm not from Canada. I don't know the layout of the land. Okay, so here we are at Dawson City in the Yukon. So this is right near the Yukon-Alaskan border. It was established in 1896 with the Klondike Gold Rush. George Carmack, Dawson Charlie, and Sucklam Jim, that's a name, they found some gold and was like, hey, everyone, we found gold. And all of a sudden, it was just a mad dash. So there was already a little town established before.
Mhm.
And then as soon as these three yahoos were like, it's the gold, whatever, like 50,000 people ascended on this town. It was probably more than that, but by that time, most of the land had been staked and claims
Mhm.
had been made. So a bunch of people turned back, but at least 50,000 prospectors and hopefuls ascended on this little town and started going to town, basically.
My thing with this
Between,
whole gold rush is how did they not realize that it's eventually going to run out when you have that many
well,
people?
between 1896 and 1899, $29 million worth of gold was pulled out of the ground. That's back in the 1800s. That is insanity. And the reason it started to die off is because I didn't write down where it was. Another place somewhere, Albany, I think it was like, we got some gold. And people like, gold, you see? Woo-hoo, and they left. And then by that time, there was a ton of really rich people in this area, and people who were still trying to make claims. So it was kind of a cross between people who had made their money and stayed, and people who were like, I still want to make my money. Now, interestingly enough, that this whole area is like a geographical wonder. They found, I didn't write down the date. Shit. Anyways, they found a wolf pup in the permafrost that is dated to be 57,000 years old. They constantly find mammoth tusks and other prehistoric bones in this area. So it's like a really historical place
Yeah.
aside from the gold rush. So, anyways, on the shore of the Klondike River sits a living ghost town. What?
Ooh.
Get invested. Um, so there are actually 17 historic buildings from back in the gold rush days. However, a lot of the buildings that are built on the site, including residential homes, all claim crazy paranormal activity. There is a tour that you can take, like I said. That includes Ruby's Place, which was an old boarding house slash brothel. It closed its doors in 1961, but is on the tour and you can go. And a lot of paranormal activity is reported in that, including apparitions and like people being touched and grabbed and hearing voices. The commissioner's residence, which is the home of the Yukon commissioner up until the 1916, that is on the tour. There is a nursing home that used to be run by nuns in the 1950s. That's on the tour. That has a lot of unexplained activity, a lot of bad feelings, a lot of people being touched and grabbed. Uh, the Dawson campus of the Yukon College, and then again, numerous residential homes. So a lot of poltergeist activity is reported, disembodied voices, door slamming, temperature fluctuations, a lot of people being emotionally affected as well seems to be
Mhm.
happening. And they attribute most of it to the fact that the land was saturated by the gold rush, which was a lawless time. There was a lot of
Yeah.
killing, a lot of torture, a lot of disease, people died of famine, like just some not great stuff that they think saturated the land. And that's why, aside from the historical buildings, just plain old people's homes are like ghosts everywhere and gunslinging activity. So that sounds like a really cool place to
It
go.
does.
Like
It
really
does.
cool.
It does. Too
I
bad.
like this. Oh, carry on.
I was gonna say too bad we couldn't get there. Well, we could, but it's a long drive for me.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take the plane. But even on a plane, it's probably like at least 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah,
Because it's like five something to BC, isn't it? From us? Well, I'm asking
I have
you.
no
You don't
idea.
know.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Anyways, Dawson City, Yukon.
All right, I'm going to stay on the East Coast still, and we're going to Broughton, Nova Scotia. And I only know how to say this is because my son's EA from a few years ago has the last name that's the same. So I only right. Anyways,
Perfect.
so this one is legit. Like people are actually saying, like so it's Broughton, which is Cape Breton area, is haunted. They actually say that. So yes, this one is haunted. Um,
Yes.
It once was a coal mine and had many buildings and North America's first revolving door because that's
Oh,
important apparently. I know. I know.
wow. We're on the map, people.
Yeah, with the doors that nobody likes. So yeah. Anyways, so coal was discovered near Loon Lake by a gentleman named E.T. Mosley and a small mine from an outcrop in 1901. So there was a wagon road about 3 miles in length was built to Mira River, and a tiny wharf was constructed, and 4 or 5 tons of coal were hauled down there. So that's how this all started. So this is how the Cape Breton Coal, Iron, and Railway Company was formed, and it was headed by Englishmen, Colonel Horace Matthew and Thomas Lancaster, and millions of dollars in capital were raised, mostly from England.
Oh,
All right.
uh,
So Colonel Mayhew was president of the company, and he quickly set about building one of Canada's first planned cities in 1905. So
mhm.
this town was designed to house about 10 to 12,000 people within 10 miles of street. 60 buildings were built, including offices, 43 minor houses, so houses for the workers, churches, 4 stores, a school, and 2 modern hotels. So it was planned, man.
Oh, wow.
So one of the hotels, which was called the Broughton Arms, was considered the finest hotel east of Montreal and had
Ooh.
the very first revolving door in North America, which was an indication of how modern and progressive the company intended its operations to be. And the other hotel was the Crown Hotel, and it had a bowling alley in the basement.
Ooh.
Oh, they,
Fancy.
yeah, so they ended up getting electric lights, running water, sewer, telephone, and telegraph. stuff, like all of the stuff to be established in the town. 200 men worked on the construction, and as many as 1,000 people lived in the town in 1906. So it was starting. It was, Colonel Mayhew named the town Broughton after his family estate at Broughton Hall in England. And after all of this construction of everything, the town seemed to have everything it needed except for a coal mine to sustain it all.
Whoops.
Whoop-de-doodle.
There's something we're missing, boys.
Literally,
Wow.
with industry to keep it going. So the problem with this was there was a lack of rail line to get the coal to the port.
Okay.
Since Broughton is inland, so it's inland. It needed a rail line to haul its coal to the harbors in either Louisburg or Sydney. And the one main line that went from Sydney to Louisburg was operated by the Dominion Coal Company, which at that time did not want a competitor to get its coal to market. There's a big old F you, it ain't happening.
Right. Oh, God.
So the Dominion Coal Company even bought land that the Broughton mine needed for mining operations in another effort to block the Cape Breton Coal, Iron, and Railway Company. So whoever these people were, they didn't like each other.
Wow.
Drama. At this point, because Colonel Mayhew had spent so much money building the town, he didn't even have enough capital to build his own railway. So now
my Lord.
He's double screwed. So he ended up going back to England in 1906, like literally, this is the same year, to seek more funds. And he left his son Horace in charge of Broughton. Well, sadly, his son committed suicide while on a hunting trip that year as well.
That sounds a little suspicious.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
So the cost of building the town bankrupted the company that Colonel Horace was in charge of in 1907. So it literally just went uphill and just crashed straight down. So at this point, Colonel Mayhew returned to England and established a new practice with his remaining sons, which he called the firm Mayhew and Mayhew. And then he later owned several coal mines in England. In 1913, he started raising more capital, and a steel Bankhead was built at the mine. New miners' houses were built, and coal mining restarted under a new manager. So this is back in Nova Scotia. Like, they're actually trying to start this up again. Okay. The company finally succeeded in gaining access to the Sydney-Louisburg railway to haul coal to Louisburg. Unfortunately, by that time, the increased demand and inflated price of coal during wartime, because now we're in the mid-19 between 1914 and 1920 here, the mine failed again because there was nothing. And guess what? The town was finally abandoned.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But it really wasn't abandoned for that long, because in 1916, the town of Broughton was used to house and train over 1,200 soldiers from the 185th Cape Breton Highlanders. So it turned it into pretty much an army base for training. Mm-hmm. But shortly after those soldiers arrived, the Crown Hotel burned down. Apparently to an accident with a plumber's torch.
Okay. Yeah, bunch of drunk army guys.
Exactly. This is emergency replacement buildings were quickly built to house and feed 500 men. When the 185th, when they shipped out in October, the 184th moved in, and they only stayed for 3 weeks. So yeah, but since that time, there's just been no one. And the ruins of Broughton have been slowly reclaimed by the forest, and some believe the ghosts of miners and soldiers who spent time there in the early 1900s are still there.
I bet.
So that would be a really
Wow.
interesting place to see as well.
Hmm.
I'd totally be down for that.
Amazing.
I
All right.
know.
Well, we're heading to Nunavut. That's Nunavut. I apologize in advance that I'm going to butcher some names here because I have no idea how to pronounce some of these things. I do what I can. So this is in Killinik, Nunavut. Sorry. I just had a moment of a glitch there. So this was previously called Bishop Jones Village, but it was also referred to as Port Burwell. It was previously located in Labrador, then in Northwest Territories, and now in Nunavut. In the, okay, brace yourself, Quick Ik Toa Look area.
That was probably pretty good.
It was. I had to like, when you can go to Google and you're like, let me hear how you say it. Even the girl on Google was like, I got nothing. So I'm like, okay, I'll make it up. Um, so I don't have the date of when it first was established, but they found very old remains of some of the first Inuit settlers in the area, and we're going to come back to that in a minute. So
Mhm.
it was formerly Inuit settlement. It was also a weather station, a trading post, a missionary port, a fishing station, and the RCMP post. Holy moly.
Jesus.
As early as 1569, it does appear on one of the Mercator maps, and it was visited by John Davis, who was an English explorer, in 1587, and again documented by another English explorer, George Weymouth, in 1602. The Dominion Government Meteorological Station established Port Borwell in 1884. In 1898 to 1904, the Job Brothers and Co. Trading Company operated a fishing station there. In 1899, Llewellyn Jones, I think that's how I say names, a bishop of Newfoundland, was assigned by the Anglican missionary to stay there and, of course, be the church service. And so he dubbed it Bishop Jones's Village. Wow.
You know why?
Okay.
Because he couldn't say the right word. So he's like, fuck this, I'm renaming
Probably.
it.
Exactly. He's like,
Yeah, can't speak that.
Bishop Jones.
Yeah.
In 1904, the Moravian, sure, missionaries bought Job Brothers and Co. Station and established their own trading post, along with their own church services. Ooh, crafty. Um, but they closed in 1924. In 1916, Hudson's Bay Company moved their trading post to the northeast part of the harbor. The Moravians, I think that's how I say it, sold their post to the Hudson Bay's Company in 1923, and then Hudson Bay Company consolidated it and closed that post in 1939. In 1942, the Hudson Bay Company forced dozens of Port Burwell, oh, forced dozens of Port Borwellians, I guess you would call them, to Southampton Island, which is another island away from Killinik. By the 1975, the government services programs and fundings had deteriorated so badly that it gave rise to a massive outmigration of families who needed a safer home and a better opportunity. But on February 8th, 1978, the last remaining 47 people were notified by radio that the government was coming by plane to remove them all. And it would be immediate, and they would close down the settlement afterwards. So families were dispersed, they were scattered, they were divided. They were all placed in and around Quebec. They arrived with no money, no housing, no personal effects, and the locals were given no heads up that these people were coming. So there were no funds available, no services, no place to support the influx of people. The community then was completely abandoned in the 1990s, but a lot of the Inuit families would return to visit and pay homage. Very recently, a group from the Inuit community set about to rebury the remains of the early settlers who were dug up by archaeologists in the 1930s. Those remains, when they were dug up, were taken to a museum in Quebec. And so the Inuit community have been fighting for a long time to get the remains and take them back to their original burial
Mhm.
sites. So they finally won that. And they all set out on an expedition to do that. While on the expedition, um, one of the older men, and he had two of his adult children with him, were attacked by a polar bear and almost killed. But
Very,
thankfully,
that's very Canadian.
isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
Um, Thankfully, they were transported to an hospital. They were both in serious condition, but both survived the attack. Um, and then finally, so the rest of them were like, "Well, we just got to carry on because we're already here now." So they managed to get the bodies and take them back to the traditional, bury them in a traditional rock grave by the water's edge. So there are still buildings that are there if you go there. They're kind of boarded up and just really eerily just sitting by themselves. People who visit the island um, do report that it's really beautiful, it's very serene, but there are shadow figures that are seen in the empty homes, voices echoing throughout, and just that strange feeling that, you're kind of being watched and followed around. Now, of course, this is a small windy island. It can also just be that factor and the wind blowing around, but I get it. I saw some pictures. It's pretty eerie. And the fact
I'm
that
gonna
they were
look it
just,
up.
and I'm pretty sure they were literally told, oh, by the way, planes are coming, get out. So a lot of people just left everything. They weren't
Mhm.
able to take anything. So those homes were just basically boarded shut and that's it. So they're like time capsules, essentially.
It would be so cool to look inside. I love stuff
Yes.
like that. It breaks my heart to see like people who just like leave everything and then you kind of try to figure out why. Why did you leave
Hmm.
everything? Just get up and go,
Yeah.
right? Like, but
Where we used to go in Kingston actually, um, where the cottage was that we used to go to. We were when we got the ATVs, we were like booking around one day, and we went down this path, and it ended at a cottage, but the whole front of the cottage was missing. And everything was still inside it, clothes. There was
mhm,
stuff still on the oven, but like this is old, like 70s, 60s stuff, but it literally looked like someone was in the middle of making supper and they got up and they just left.
mhm.
Where the front of the cottage is, I have no idea. But the front of the cottage is gone. We went in and sort of walked around a bit, but of course it's deteriorating. But same thing. What happened? Did the
Yeah.
person just literally drop dead and then the family never wanted the cottage? I have no idea. It's literally a mystery because everything is still there. I love it.
Me too, but it makes you wonder. It does. We
Yeah,
should do an episode on that.
we should. Haunted cottages.
Exactly.
I'm writing that down.
That'll be what we do on our vacation.
Yes, next week.
Oh my gosh. So now we're going to go back, and just like you, I'm probably going to butcher these names because I don't speak an ounce of French. Um, so this place is called Val Jalbert. Okay,
Yep.
it's located in the Saguenay Lac Saint Jean region. So I'm going to assume that is the Saguenay Lake Saint John region because they always put things in the opposite direction. Anyways, the story of this Val Jalbert is about as fleeting as any ghost town could hope to have. It was founded in 1901, and it went straight up to being a successful community by the local pulp mill that was at the base of Weatchuan Falls. I
Wow.
butchered that 100%.
You
But
did a
whatever.
great job. Good job.
Thanks. Um, so the founder of the village was a gentleman named Demay Jalbert. And he died only 3 years after founding this village.
Oh.
It was renamed to Valjalbert in his honor, although it was originally called, and here we go again, I'm going to butcher the hell out of this, Saint Georges de Weatchuan, after the river that was running through it.
Okay.
So the village relied on the pulp and paper mill that was built to meet the ever-growing demand for newspapers in America and in Great Britain. So the location was great because it was in between two local waterfalls that supplied plenty of energy to operate the paper mill. In 1927, the plant was shut down due to the lower demand for non-transformed mechanical pulp, whatever the hell that is.
Okay. Hence, that's why it shut down, because no one's heard
It would have
of
been just easier if they said they changed the way they manufactured paper. Many of the workers stuck around for a couple of years hoping to get their old jobs back. But in 1929, the company ordered the houses to be boarded up, and that these company homes, they were ultra modern homes at that time, right? So they had all the amenities, but they were told to suck it up, and they were boarding it up, and goodbye, everybody.
Wow.
So in 1926, there was 950 residents in this town, and by 1930, so 4 years later, there was only 50.
Oh.
Yeah. Again, this is another town that was carefully planned, and it had electric lighting in the streets and in houses, water and sewer systems, running water in all the homes, hydrants for firefighting, wooden sidewalks, a paved main street, a hotel, and a convent school. So they had this town planned out like 100%.
Yeah.
And the people who lived there, the workers and the laborers, had some of the highest wages in the area. So it was kind of like an elite town.
Mm-hmm.
In 1949, the company finally went bankrupt, and the Quebec government gained title on the land and the village. And by this time, it was abandoned. So the government came in and swooped it up. They took the title and they closed the town for non-payment of taxes.
Oh.
Yeah. But in 1960, it became a park.
All right.
With over 70 of its original abandoned buildings still remaining. They were in such good condition that has been described as one of Canada's best preserved ghost towns.
So it's a ghost town, but you can play in the park there?
Oh, no, you can go there because it opened to the public in 1960. Yeah.
So they're just buildings, and you can just cruise around like.
Yeah, apparently it is the second most visited tourist attraction in the area, right after the zoo.
Wow.
It is. There are pictures of it, and I was looking at them, and I was like, damn.
Wow.
Those are haunted.
I bet. That's awesome.
But they are so, just because Quebec can't even keep their roads properly maintained, I'm surprised they were able to keep these houses maintained.
Right.
Right? So, but it's definitely, depending on how far away it is, we should visit because it's really cool looking.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
I don't know that I've ever actually been to Quebec. I've been to Montreal.
It's shit. Sorry, anybody who's from Quebec.
Well, I've heard though, because it's like old Quebec, that's where you're supposed to go. That's where all the cool
That's if you can get
cemeteries,
there
haunted
first.
places. Oh.
Their tunnel system and their highways, I'm terrified. I'd rather drive in New York. Literally.
Well then.
Yeah,
maybe not a road trip anytime soon.
Listen, and it's 8 hours from here to Quebec City, so.
Oh,
yeah.
Not by plane. All right. Well, let's let's take a little trip to a place called Yellowknife. And that's a real place, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just tuning into Canada for the first time, all of these names are real. So we are going to the Giant Mine Town site. This is located 4 kilometers north of Yellowknife. It once housed workers for the Giant Mine Gold Mine, which ceased operation in 2004, so fairly recently. It's probably best known for two kind of shitty things. The first one, 1992, there was a deadly bombing that occurred during a labor dispute.
Mhm.
Um, so 750 feet underground, Roger Warren wired some explosives and detonated them, which killed 9 replacement workers. He, of
This,
course, was apprehended and charged.
yeah. And we, if we went through this in our, I don't even know what episode 8. No, after that,
Yeah, because we did one on
we
mines, I
did.
think, right?
Yeah, yeah, I did
Um,
do that one. Yeah, because he
yes,
killed all the scabs, as they call
yes. And I'm not entirely sure that he meant to kill the people. I think he just wanted to set a bomb off to like destroy the thing, but
them.
inadvertently killed people. Um, so currently, the site is an environmental safety concern due to the arsenic trailings uh, that came from the site. So, highly toxic arsenic trioxide dust generated from the gold refining process went up the chimney stacks and then just billowed out into the world and settled in the local community. This, in turn, led to mass deaths of cattle and some people from eating contaminated food or when the snow came down, because, of course, it was in the snow. Um, the local First Nations people are actually in a massive lawsuit because they are suing the mine for contaminating their ancestral homelands. Um, so that's still ongoing. Now there are 11 chambers and I think 5 vaults um, under the mine that contain over 237,000 tons of arsenic waste. So, houses, barracks, disused playgrounds all still remain. However, in 2022, calls to demolish the entire place to begin a $1 billion cleanup project was called for. I believe it is underway because my other half knows the people that are there. Well, some of the people that are doing the cleanup. It's going to take a long time. They in the thing that I read, it said it's going to span until at least 2038. Um, whether it takes that long, I don't know, but it is a massive thing. Now, it does say visitors are allowed, but must seek permission. There is absolutely no trespassing, likely because it's a danger zone. I don't know if people can still visit now that they're under this massive cleanup. I don't know that you'd want to. At first, I was like, "Oh my god, that sounds great." And then when I heard it's worse than Chernobyl, maybe not, maybe
Ugh.
not. So, of course, there are well, up until probably the cleanup, but there was reports again, the typical like people seeing people in the abandoned houses, hearing voices, blah
Mhm.
blah blah. So I'm not sure the local community and people that used to live there petitioned that they don't destroy the buildings, that they actually keep them as heritage sites. But I don't think they can be saved because they're probably covered in arsenic. Probably the
Mhm.
whole place is saturated. So I think they're trying the best they can to do whatever cleanup they can, but
Mhm.
it's a massive, massive feat that is costing
Crazy.
taxpayers
A lot of money.
bazillions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure why it falls on the taxpayer. Why would that not be the company? But they probably went under because,
Yeah. Got to get it from someone.
murder,
Somewhere.
arsenic. Beep. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So enter at your own risk, quite literally.
Yeah, don't bring a lighter.
No.
No. Oh my gosh. All right. St. Elizabeth, Manitoba. Because Manitoba
Oh,
actually has something.
I know. Finally. Well,
So,
I don't know. I feel like the whole place is just abandoned ghost towns.
yeah, that's a Manitoba for you. Um, so St. Elizabeth is located about 8 miles east of Morris on Highway 23 and a mile south on Road 12E. And it was established as a French-Canadian Roman Catholic parish through the efforts of Father David Fillion, who was a parish
Hmm.
priest at St. John Baptiste. To fulfill his dream of a French-Canadian settlement, Father Fillion had, in the late 1870s, traveled to the mill cities of New England. There, he met families who had moved to Quebec or moved from Quebec to work, and he somehow managed to persuade these peoples to move to Manitoba from New England.
Wow.
This is New England as in the state.
Yes.
Over the following years, French Canadian settlers arrived from elsewhere in the US and from Quebec. But it wasn't until 1901 that the parish of St. Elizabeth was officially founded by another priest, Father J.M. Jollies, because it's not French, this one. And he was a parish priest of St. Pierre. So first to
So
be built,
the first guy didn't even get to stake claims on
no, no,
founding it?
no, no,
Damn it.
no. But the first thing to be built was a rectory. What a surprise. With an
Mhm.
upstairs chapel, followed by a parish hall. Construction of
Ooh.
the first church began in 1903, but wasn't completed for almost 10 years.
Oh,
They was slow.
yeah.
Many parishioners came from nearby farms, but gradually the town started to acquire various different businesses. The first general store opened in 1901, and it was operated by a man by the name of Henri Fontaine, and it contained the post office, a barbershop, pool room, and a boarding place. I guess it was a hotel at some point.
Right.
A new store, what do I have here? Yeah, a new store was built in 1923 with the former one becoming a cheese factory.
A cheesecake factory? Delicious.
So St. Elizabeth was never a large town, but did at one time contain about 15 homes, a blacksmith shop, a bank, a credit union, a livery stable, a restaurant, a milliner, which is a hat maker, and eventually a garage for those owning a car.
Ooh.
However, despite the villagers' hopes, no railway line was ever built that way.
Damn.
Other blows to this community was the Red River flood of the 1950s, or of 1950, I should say, and a fire that destroyed the church and the rectory in 1951.
Oh no, it took them so long to build it as well.
So all that hard work up in flames.
Oh.
But here's the thing, almost right away, with a hired contractor, volunteer labor, and financial help from nearby districts, work began on a new church, and that was completed within the following year.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't take them long to build the second one. In the 1920s, Russian Mennonites, which sounds absolutely
Yes,
terrifying to
it
me.
does. None of that makes sense.
No, settled nearby, adding another cultural identity to this region. Despite that, unfortunately, drought and the Great Depression, school consolidations, and better roads, and the nearby presence of larger cities gradually led to the decline and the loss of many homes and businesses in St. Elizabeth. By 1970, only 2 families lived there.
Wow.
Yeah. Finally, even the church was sold and converted into a residence, but only for a while.
Ooh.
But only for a
Oh.
while. The former parish members of that church and friends, they began to form this St. Elizabeth Historical Committee, and they eventually just bought back the church and they restored it to a church.
Nice.
So guess what? That church still stands and is used today. But the rest of St. Elizabeth is not.
Yep.
Several buildings do still stand, but they're all in such a state of disrepair that obviously they're not useful and they're dangerous.
Hmm.
But the church is still used, and they still use the church for services and ceremonies and events. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Wow. Well, it's been like built and burned and built and built so many times. They
Mhm.
should be using it.
Yeah,
Well, let me
yeah.
see what I got going on.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, what else do you have? I got like three more.
I have two more. They're pretty small, so we'll do
Okay.
this one, which is the smallest of all. So we're back in Nunavut.
Woo!
Um, so this is Fort Ross. It is at the eastern end of Bellet Strait on the southeastern peninsula of Somerset Island, which was a key location to the Northwest Passage. If you understood any of that, that's great.
I think we learned that in like grade 10 history. I don't.
Yeah. So in other words, it was like a really good spot for ships and all the other stuff to come on. So founded in 1937, it was a former trading post on Somerset Island and the last trading post for the Hudson Bay Company. Once again, HBC, here we go. So it actually only operated for 11 years and it was abandoned in 1948 due to the severity of weather. So essentially, it was as stated a trading post. So it was, where people come in, get supplies, do whatever. For a couple of years, the weather was so bad, people were snowed in or snowed out, and no one could reach the place. Supplies got really, really low. People got very desperate. And so after the last severe winter storm, they were like, screw this. This is stupid. We should go somewhere else. So they just abandoned the place. They were like, I'm out. Peace. There are four buildings that still remain and are not in great condition, but is still structurally pretty sound. So there was the post manager's house, a powerhouse, a warehouse, and a store. So you can still visit, as far as I know. I don't know that there's much else there. It sounds like it's not a great place to get to. Maybe go in the summer. Probably not
What
much of a
what
winter
is the difference?
destination.
They don't
This
have
is true.
summer up
When
there.
I said summer, I mean when it's daylight for 24 hours a day, I guess.
Yeah, no thanks.
Exactly. So again, I'm not even going to say eeriness because that's just what everyone seems to think. But these are pretty much, from the look of the pictures, they're semi boarded up. So I think it's just more you feel a bit weird when you're around them
Mhm.
because again, it's just they just went forget it
Yeah,
and they just left.
they legit went tits up.
Yes, frozen tits up apparently.
Just like little popsicle.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
It's nipping
It's like I
it.
always say. And I don't like to, I know I'm Canadian and all that, but I'm having none of it for Nunavut. It's not on my bucket list to go. I don't like cold. I don't, no. If it was light for 24 hours a day, I don't think I could handle it, even with blackout curtains. I don't know how any of them do it, and I applaud them for it. It's just not for
Yeah,
me. Not for
I
me.
don't know either. I don't know either.
Oh
I
my.
mean, it's certainly not on the top of my list, but if
No.
for some reason I'd go maybe to experience it, but not in the winter. So
No.
basically, like end of June and July, that's my window of when I would
And
go
I
because I
also,
feel like there would be the least amount of snow. It's probably beautiful. We'll
yeah.
probably get viewers be like, fuck you, it's like super amazing here and send us all these pictures of lush green places, which please do educate us.
Yes.
Um, but doesn't sound like it for this one. If they were like, yeah, we can't even get to this bitch, so
Yeah, no
we're
thanks.
out.
Okay. Let's go to Saskatchewan where it's a little warmer.
Yes.
This
Right
place is
now,
called
very warm.
Govan Lock. Who knows? Maybe it's already burned down again. I don't know. Um,
Ooh.
because I should really actually look where this is on the map of where things are burning right now. So this
I
Govan
think
Lock
just
previous,
all of Saskatchewan
yeah,
at this
pretty
point,
much.
unfortunately.
Um, so it previously held the status of a village. It had a peak population of 151 residents, but it was dissolved of its status. Um, on January 1st, 1976.
Oh.
So Govan-Lock was located on Highway 21 and Highway 13, and was also it's also known as the historic Red Coat Trail. Although many cement foundations and wooden sidewalks can still be found scattered throughout the site of where the town was, the only building that still stands, and this is old information as of 2010, so it could already be gone, is the old community hall and a commemorative plaque. So you get a
Okay.
hall and a plaque. So in 1910, and this place has history. I would like to visit this place. In 1910, a Moose Jaw resident by the name of William Govan-Lock moved to the area with his family after applying for a homestead. They were one of the first pioneer families in southwest Saskatchewan. In 1913, he negotiated a land deal with the Canadian Pacific Railway, starting a new town later named in his honor. That same year, he established a post office for the area with his wife, Bessie, as the first postmaster. So she had a job.
Nice.
In 1914, another pioneer, John Linder, built Govan-Lock's first hotel. The hotel stood 2 stories tall with 10 rooms. 3 years later, James Gaff stopped at the hotel for a rest after finding out that no rooms were available. He immediately purchased the hotel for $4,500.
No rooms? I'll buy you then.
Literally, I don't understand what was going through their minds at that time, but each their own.
It's like the biggest flex.
Yeah.
I'll buy all the rooms.
Yeah. Literally. And then he probably proceeded to kick people out.
Oh, yeah.
So in the early part of the 20th century, Govan-Lock had a Canadian Pacific Railway station. So they actually were a junction. They had a section house, multiple grain elevators, and a chamber of commerce. The businesses in town included 2 general stores, a blacksmith shop, a livery barn, 2 machine agencies, a pool room, a laundromat, a school, a meat shop, and a service station selling Model T Fords. So they had a car dealership.
Wow.
And most of these businesses were connected by those wooden sidewalks. Fun times with the wooden sidewalks.
Mm-hmm. Clickety clack.
New stores were built in 1923. Oh no, I already read that one. There we go. Now here's where it gets really fun. So as we all know, Saskatchewan does border on Montana, so the state of Montana and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So after Montana's Prohibition Declaration in 1919, large groups of Americans from that state would frequently cross the border by train to visit Govan-Lock to purchase booze. So guess what? Because of this lucrative business, 4 liquor warehouses were established in the center to serve the booming liquor trade.
Nice.
Guess what comes with booze? Gambling and parties. That too. Gambling and parties became common, attracting not only thirsty people from across the border, but many bachelors from all parts of South Saskatchewan who wanted to let loose.
Okay.
So a pool room and a 2-story dance hall building were built and owned by a gentleman by the name of Henry Boose. These places took advantage of American customers waiting for their liquor orders, offering a game of pool or high-stakes poker tables to fill the time. Yeah. It says revelry and good times were staples in Govan-Lock during its early days. This was legit a party town.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, to avoid legal problems, American bootleggers would have to obtain a tourist pass at Canada's border entry points. They would have come to the pioneer town, so they would have come to Govan-Lock with their car trunks weighed down with sandbags in order to avoid suspicion when they returned with a trunk full of heavy booze. They were smart.
Jeez.
Could you just imagine like the shit that would have gone down? Like, this is why I want to visit this wooden sidewalk and commemorative plaque.
Sidewalk.
In 1922, Govenlock's prosperity in the bootlegging business ended when the government of Saskatchewan restricted liquor export houses to cities with 10,000 people or more. Yep.
Wow.
So this started the slow end of the once promising pioneer town. And over the years, one by one, stores and shops soon closed and the residents left. So by 1962, the only grain elevator left in Govenlock was toppled and demolished. And by 1990, rural municipality officials brought in the bulldozers and demolished all but one of the remaining buildings that stood in Govenlock, including the old Govenlock Hotel. So the government was just mowing it down. That has like the coolest history of like all of the ones that I looked at.
I like that.
So do I. I think we need to visit. Like I said, I want to visit the commemorative plaque.
Oh my gosh. Well, my one's nowhere near as exciting as that. Now I've lost the bridge. All right, we're back in the Northwest Territories.
Oh
This is
gosh.
another fort. Fort Confidence. What a name. And I'm going to butcher, I think, how I pronounce this. So, the mouth of the Deas River? Deas? Dease. I don't know either. Somewhere, someone's yelling down the phone at me, being like, outsider! But, anyways, the eastern tip of the Deas Arm of Great Bear Lake in the Northwest Territories was a Hudson Bay establishment.
Listen, it's
Built-
very fitting that we're talking about this because of,
Exactly, paying homage to them. So, built in 1837 by Peter Warren Diaz and Thomas Simpson. It served as quarters for 2 winters. It was a basic log cabin and it burned down in the 1840-ish. 1848, it was rebuilt by John Bell and used by Sir John Richards and Sir John Reyes, I think, as a base of operations during a search for the famous explorer Sir John Franklin, who went missing along the Arctic coast. Look it up, people. History. Um, by 1911, the building had once again been destroyed by a fire. Who set in fire to these places? I don't even know what's going on, but they do. Um, Now, apparently, there's kind of just ruins that remain. However, when people visit the area, they feel a very eerie presence, like they are being watched. They feel feelings of severe anxiety and an urge to flee, and a very oppressive feeling. I couldn't really get much sense as to why, other than the fact that, again, it was around gold rush days where it was just lawless and people in general just did whatever the hell they wanted. And so I think the land was very saturated by death and disease and just nastiness. But there are still ruins you can go look at. And sometimes I think ruins just give you the heebie jeebies for some reason.
Mm.
They're just ruins. But whenever I'm cruising around the back roads here and you see ruins of like an old barn, you're like, ugh, it's a barn. I don't think much happened, but you're just like, oh, it's a ruin.
I love it. We should do
Yeah.
that one day. We should cruise, find random creepy places.
Yeah. Well, they're not far from, we can walk around my house. The new property we have, that's where we should be walking around.
I have 2 left, and one's really short, and this one is, I don't even know. I think that's all I have. Is that all I have? Oh, no. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So we're going to go into Ontario here.
Finally.
Balaclava. Yeah.
Mhm.
A lot of us have heard of it and all that. It is situated in Renfrew County, so in Eastern Ontario. It is a very well-known site, and it's known for its rundown sawmill, which sits along a shallow river and is surrounded by rotting tree logs. What a surprise, it's Ontario.
Yes.
Pieces of machinery and wagon wheels. So if you're wondering where this is, it is you can find it on Scott Bush Road, which is really funny because I knew a Scott Bush and he died. That's really weird that
Oh.
just north of the community of Decker. or whatever. That's kind of French looking, but whatever. So the town takes its name from the Battle of Balaclava, a skirmish during the Crimean War in the 1850s. In its heyday, Balaclava was a flourishing lumber town that produced up to 1 million board feet of lumber per week.
Whoa, per week.
Yeah, per week.
Oof.
So the sawmill was the heart of the community, and it was one of Ontario's last water-powered mills, and it was built in 1855. It was partially destroyed by fire in 1936 and rebuilt 3 years later. Today, the structure still remains, but it is in such a state of disrepair that if you step foot in it, you're probably just going to go right through.
Oh gosh.
So it literally says in my notes, it's best to admire from afar.
Yes.
It's also the site of Ontario's first ever environmental lawsuit. Yeah. So apparently the Richards family bought the sawmill in 1868. But in 1911, they were taken to court when a nearby grist mill complained that the family was disposing too much sawdust into the river.
Oh.
The grist mill won, and the Richards family was required to pay 200 USD.
Oh.
So 200 American in
Yeah,
restitution.
what?
Remember, this is in 1911, so it's still probably the same amount as it is today. The lawsuit also resulted in the addition of a sawdust burner. So they had to, instead of dumping it, they had to burn it. So by the mid 1950s, the depleted timber supply, so now they've gone through everything in the area, meant that the sawmill was only producing a few thousand board feet every year.
Damn, 1 million a week to nothing a year. Wow.
So soon it was forced to shut down, and when it shut down, so did the Balaclava General Store. And a host of other businesses and shops that had been previous there had shuttered and shut their doors years before. This is bypassed by railways, and with its only industry gone, so the lumber industry, Balaclava, which was once home to about 200 residents, was abandoned. In the following years, other staples like the general store, the blacksmith shop, 2 hotels, and the sawmill either burned down, were dismantled, or just kind of crumbled in on themselves.
Damn.
How sad. How sad.
Mm.
Yeah, you can go visit. Like, it's super pretty up there, apparently. I think we're going up that way in October. Maybe we'll drive through it.
Yeah, we should have a look and see.
I know. Okay, and last on my list is a place, and it's in Alberta, and it's got a really awful, horrible, tragic, depressing past. And chances are it's probably haunted, and there really isn't much to this. It's legitimately a ghost town. It was literally wiped off the map in one fell swoop. It is in a place called Frank, Alberta, and at 4 a.m. on the morning of April 29th, 1903, Turtle Mountain crushed the town of Frank. It literally crumbled. The event has been has become to be known as the Frank Slide, and it is the deadliest avalanche in Albertan history. And it was not a snow avalanche, it was a rock avalanche.
Oh my Lord.
So it says entire homes were destroyed by boulders the size of houses traveling at 120 kilometers an hour down its path.
Wow.
Yeah, it literally just
decimated the town.
Yeah.
Oh
the
my
shelf
gosh.
of rock that fell was more than 1 kilometer in length and half a kilometer high, breaking apart and smashing through the town, killing almost 100 of the 600 residents.
Wow.
So terrified of another
That's
rock
awful.
slide, residents packed up entire buildings and moved them to the town of New Frank, located just northwest of its original site. They literally
But
just
all
grabbed
those
everything.
people are like, it's just cocooned under there.
Yeah.
Tombed, I should say.
Literally, you wouldn't even be able to dig them out. I believe the whole families were lost in one fell swoop of these rocks. Yeah. So what little remains of the town, aside from the boulders that crushed it, because they're all still there, there's legitimately nothing left. If you want, you can visit the Frank Slide Interpretive Center, which is in Crow's Nest Pass, and it gives a fuller picture of the devastation and how people in Cochrane, almost 200 kilometers away, could hear the rocks falling. And there are also stories from survivors, and there are also like hypotheses and stuff from scientists to say if they could ever see another Turtle Mountain landslide again.
Right.
So how crazy is that? That is a ghost town. Legit. There will be stuff there 100% because that's, and I think they have done a lot of documentaries on it, and it's super interesting. And I do have some pictures that we will be posting of it because it's Canadian history. It's terrifying Canadian history. So we're going to end it on that awful sad note.
Yeah, exactly. On that note, everyone, have a good night.
Yeah. Next time you're driving in like Northern Ontario or just even north, or I think even east too, and you see those signs with the rocks falling, it's going to bring a whole new level of knowledge.
Yes. Well, even when you're driving towards Kingston and you get to the part where there's either side is just
the rock wall,
mountains almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, if something comes flying, we're fucked. Yeah. I remember like usually traffic wise, if you're coming back from the cottage and you're just sitting in traffic and you're like, yeah, if there's an avalanche right now, we can't go anywhere. We're just sitting ducks.
Yep.
So yeah.
Well, yeah. So Frank, Alberta is literally a ghost town. There's just literally nothing left. Legit. It's just a town of rock now. So yeah. But go learn about it because it's actually really interesting, but really sad at the same time, right? So
absolutely.
Part of history that people probably want to stop talking about, but we need to talk about. Just like a lot of those.
Especially if they can try and prevent another thing happening. I'm sure nothing is built there, but I mean, if they can prevent again anything from happening, that would be good.
Yeah.
Now you may have noticed we did not have anything on PEI, and that's because apparently there is no area for abandoned towns.
Listen, it's 45 minutes from one side of the island to the other. Like there's like
listen, I'm willing to go on a road trip to PEI. I'll pack my bags and leave in the morning. And I'll let you know if there's anything abandoned. We'll do like a part 2 of just PEI if I find anything abandoned.
It's going to be an entire Kaz episode because listen, the last time I went to PEI, I was 16 and I was not thrilled with the amount of potato fields and churches that I had seen. So
there has to be abandoned churches. I'll find them.
Okay,
I'll find them and we'll do them.
We'll do a whole like slideshow on like YouTube and Instagram of abandoned places in PEI.
Yes. Done.
But if you know of a ghost town or you've been to one of these ghost towns and you've had an experience, we'd love to hear it. So you can send us all your stories and your experiences or your questions, whatever. We don't care. Send them to us at paranormalpodcast@gmail.com. That's PAREHNORMAL podcast@gmail.com. Or you can comment on, I was going to say Twitter. We don't even have Twitter. Comment on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok because we post on there too sometimes. But yeah, send us your ghost towns.
Yeah.
And
with actual ghosts in them. That would be good.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think all ghost towns probably have ghosts because people who died there don't realize that it's no longer there.
Very true. Very true.
That's my theory. But yeah, anyways, it's a nice day out and it's time for us to actually be responsible adults and do things.
I know. We're just lay around in the sun.
Yeah, I think that might be a better idea.
Agreed.
So, have a great day, everybody.
Yes, and, bye, everyone.
Yeah, we will see you next week when we talk about. What are we talking about? Oh yeah,
Justice Court.
Justice Court in Port Perry. Oh my god, brain fart for a few seconds. I don't even know if that was a fart. That was a complete bust. Oh my god. Anyways, all right, have a great week, everybody. We'll talk later.
Bye.